Hi everyone. So this week, Dodd-Frank is going to get repealed. If you don't know what Dodd-Frank is, um, I'll explain it now. If you do, I'm sorry, but it does need to be explained. So to understand what Dodd-Frank is and why it's there, um, we need to do a little bit of a history lesson. It needs to go back to 1929, where there was the market crash in America, bankers jumping out of windows, mass unemployment, big recession. Um, FDR came in 1933 after this financial crash and put regulations in place that stopped it from happening again. And these regulations were called Glass-Steagall. What Glass-Steagall did was it separated commercial and investment banks. It it stopped the bankers from gambling with the money that they made from the commercial banks. It separated them. So with the investment banks, if they went bust, if they made a risky decision and the bank, you know, crumbled as a result of it, tough shit. The bank's gone. The people's money was protected, and it worked fantastically for 70 years. There was very little problems in that time. And then this guy came along, who is my least favourite president of all time. Probably my least favourite president, although Truman's up there as well. Um, he's certainly one of my least favourite people at the moment, that's for sure. But he repealed Glass-Steagall. Um, and for the next 9 years, the bankers made a hell of a lot of money. They created a bubble. They created the subprime mortgages, and the economy crashed in 2008. Now, to understand why it crashed, I'm not going to cover that here. All I'll say is watch this movie that's narrated by Matt Damon called Inside Job. It's brilliant. It really is. And if you're not angry about 2008, first of all, you should be. Second of all, you'll be furious after watching that video. So anyway, in 2008, Obama comes in just after the crash. He immediately fills his cabinet with the same people that caused the crash and then bailed out the banks. Nobody went to prison. Hey, if you or I did that sort of stuff, we'd be going away for a long time. But these bankers, if you're rich, there's different rules by the look of it. In 2010, though, to Obama's credit, in the 72 days that he had the supermajority, he passed the Dodd-Frank Act. Now, Dodd-Frank was essentially the same sort of regulation as Glass-Steagall. It just didn't go as far. Most people at the time, myself included, just thought this is not good enough. There's not enough there. There's not enough regulations. However, it did rein them in quite a bit. Now, you can tell that it reined them in quite a bit because ever since, Wall Street and rich people who make their money from Wall Street and politicians who are paid by Goldman Sachs and Wall Street have all been complaining about it. So you know that it's there and it's doing a good job. And this is what they're going to repeal. The key point in the Dodd-Frank Act is something called the Volcker rule. Now, it's about 100 pages long. I haven't read it, but I do know essentially what it does, and it stops the banks from investing in hedge funds, almost like acting like a hedge fund. It limits them to about 3% of they can only invest about 3% of their assets into private equity and hedge funds. It stops them making the risky investments that put the people at risk, and that's the key thing. And this is what they're going to gut. And the way they're going to gut it, as this article in the Washington Post says, 10 years after financial crisis, Senate prepares to roll back banking rules. Now, in that article, it says the core of the new bill exempts about 24 financial companies with assets between 50 billion and 250 billion from the highest levels of scrutiny by the Federal Reserve, the nation's central bank. Supporters argue that the legislation would bring much needed relief to these banks worth between 50 billion and 250 billion dollars. Are you not worth enough, for fuck's sake? Much needed relief. that were treated like their much larger counterparts under the 2010 legislation. Okay, all right, if that's the argument, and these banks weren't anything to do with the financial crash, then it does make sense that we shouldn't punish them. But that's not the case. These banks can't pretend they're not important, says Bloomberg. This is from March the 5th, so this is today, actually. One indicator would be how the government treated such institutions during the 2008 financial crisis. If it saw fit to bail them out, then perhaps they are too big to ignore. Now that makes sense. It did. The Treasury spent about more than 45 billion in all, bailing out the same banks that are going to be in this 50 to 250 billion threshold that they're trying to write in and gut from the Volcker rule now. You can see there the list. Ally Financial, 16.3 billion. SunTrust, 4.8 billion. SunTrust actually, I think, is mentioned in Inside Job, although I might be wrong on that. Regions Financial Corporation, 3.5 billion. American Express, 3.4 billion. These were banks that they may not have been the main people that caused the 2008 crash, but they certainly weren't fucking innocent. And now they're getting free rein to do it all over again. Now they're going to be able to make risky investments. And we all know how that goes. They privatise the gains. Any money they make, it's for them. If they lose it and the bank goes under because they've made stupid mistakes and risky gambles, hey, they've socialised the losses. They'll get bailed out again by the government. It's like, can't you learn from history, for God's sake? Now, the reason this is going to pass, I actually said it's going to pass in the Senate, and it is. And the reason it is because of 12, I think it's 12, although it might be more than that, Democrats. These are the 12 Democrats that I've found that are co-sponsoring the bill. Other Democrats might jump on board. But if you actually look at these 12 Democrats and you look, well, why are they signing on to this? Why are they co-sponsoring it? They're Democrats. Unsurprisingly, as with anything, as with any reason in the Senate, why a senator does something, it comes down to money. If you follow the money, it speaks volumes. It tells you exactly why. Now, I just picked 3 of these senators today and had a look and scrutinised them on Open Secrets. First one, Senator Tom Carper, Delaware. At the bottom there, you can see his top industries for the last 5 years. Insurance, 422,000. Securities and investments, 306,000. MetLife, 77,000. And this next one, you can see there at the top, second from the top, 306,000. This is this year, $306,000. Commercial banks, $176,000. We'll move on to the next one. Heidi Heitkamp, my second least favourite Democratic senator. Lawyers, law firms, 855,000. Securities investments, 634,000 in the last 5 years. Top contributors, Goldman Sachs, General Electric. That's probably oil and gas there. And there you see Heidi Heitkamp is a top recipient from the following industries in the last 12 months. Second from the top there. Number 1, commercial banks. Seeing a pattern. Second from the top, securities and investment, 511,000. Commercial banks, 250,000. And then we come to my least favourite senator. Unsurprising that the 2 of them have co-sponsored this bill. Joe Manchin, last 5 years. Leadership PACs, although that could be anything, you have to look at what the PACs are. But securities and investment, 289,000. Capital Group, 96,000. Capital Group companies, 42,000. And here we go, the very top there. Securities and investment, $406,000. Commercial banks is bound to be on there. Yes, it is. $124,000. They're bribed. Problems after problem after problem. You look at them in America, it comes down to one thing: money in politics. Every time. Now, I've looked at those 12 senators. Well, in fact, I've looked at about 8 of them, and it was quite obvious why they are taking this money and why they're signing on to the bill. They're up for re-election. Doug Jones, I think, is the only one. Of the 8 that I checked, they're all up for re-election this year. They all need the money for the funding for their campaigns, and they're doing this, and they're selling out the public of America. They're selling out the very people who were screwed over in 2008, who had their fucking lives destroyed in 2008. They are selling them out, and they are risking it all happening all over again. For 70 years after Glass-Steagall, there wasn't a financial crash. Certainly not a big one. 8 years after it's repealed, gone. Or 9 years after it's repealed, 2008 financial crash. If this gets rolled back, it's going to happen again. It's risking it happening again. Okay, the very biggest banks aren't going to be able to do it, but do you think they're going to find some way of moving money around so these smaller banks? Of course they are. They're always going to bend the rules. It's disgusting, it really is. So it's going to happen. This bill is going to get through. But these people are up for re-election this year. And this is why whenever I see on social media somebody saying, oh, vote blue in November, and November there's going to be a blue wave and there's going to be a blue tsunami. No, you idiots. The most important thing this year is not the midterms. Well, it's certainly not the midterms at the moment. The important thing is the primaries. Joe Manchin, I know, just off the top of my head, is up for re-election this year against this woman, Paula Jean Swearingen. She's a coal miner's daughter. She is your atypical West Virginian. She's seen people die from black lung. She's the woman who went to Bernie Sanders when Bernie Sanders did that town hall, I think in 2016, and said, you know, we need help. And he took her number down, and now she's running against Joe Manchin for the Justice Democrats, taking no PAC money, taking no corporate money. That's who you need to vote for. Unfortunately, the last polling I saw, Joe Manchin was on 46%. He was underwater, that's great. And Paula Jean Swearingen was only on 10. Now, granted, that was quite a while ago. I haven't seen any recent polling on it. But it didn't look good at the time. It was encouraging that she was up to 10%, but I've got a feeling he's going to get re-elected, and he's the worst. He's just the worst. So if you're in West Virginia, or you know anybody in West Virginia, get the word out and get behind Paula Jean, because she will stand up to these bullies. She would never ever co-sponsor a bill like this. Never. She would never vote for another 160 billion over the next 2 years for war. She wouldn't do that. Joe Manchin does. So forget the blue wave, forget the blue tsunami for now. It's the primaries that are the most important thing. And I'm sure if you actually looked at that list, this list here, these people, if they're up for re-election, in fact, I'll add on afterwards whether they're up for re-election or not, and who they are running against. I'll do some research and I'll add it up here. Get the word out. They've got to go. They've got to go. They are risking your futures and your children's futures. Also, they can get money from Wall Street, and Wall Street can gamble away the money that, hey, they've privatized the gains and socialized the losses, and that was the problem in 2008 and why they had to be bailed out. And it's going to happen all over again. So get the word out, share the video, get it out there, and just get these bastards out, because they do not work for you at all. I want to say a big thank you to anybody that has been kind enough to support me on Patreon. It really is appreciated. I'm going to do my best for you, I really am. As I said in the last video, I've got about 4 weeks. Unless I can get to the point in about 4 weeks where I can do this full time, I'm going to have to scale back the amount of videos, unfortunately. I'm going to have to concentrate on making money on it somewhere else. So if you can support me on Patreon or buying the book, please do. The links are down there. Please subscribe. Please hit the bell as well, so you get a notification whenever I upload a video in future. Otherwise, you won't see it. It will get lost in the sea of YouTube. Now they've changed their algorithm, even if you are subscribed. So please hit that bell. and obviously share it as wide as you can on social media and anywhere else you can. Um, Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully, I haven't made any mistakes as well, because I'm not a financial expert. If I have made any mistakes, let me know. They've been honest mistakes. I've done as much research as I can for this video, because I know it's really important that this bill doesn't pass, but unfortunately it's going to. Um, Hopefully, if you get the right people in the midterms, though, by voting and getting the right people in through the primaries, it can be reversed when we get, um, hopefully in 2020, in my opinion, President Tulsi Gabbard or Bernie Sanders. So thanks very much for watching, and until next time, take care and peace.